Yeah, man. So you've like I say, you're keeping yourself busy with family stuff as well and that, but you're also writing a book during lockdown as well, which is good. 10 pounds of bold, which is exciting. What made you decide, rather than going into the book, because obviously you want people to invest in that and stuff, what can you take me back to the moment, because that's quite a big commitment to yourself and to everybody else. What was the moment you decided to do that, man?
Well, I couldn't say for sure when in particular, other than the fact that I just found I sort of came to realize that I was answering the same questions sort of over and over again about like, so like take me through like how this whole thing came to be, like, you know, and take me through like the first time Billy called you, and you know, and then what happened, you know, because it's like different people have kind of jumped on at different stages in the growth of the brand, right? So like some people have you know, got to know it from the 10 pounds of gold series and kind of kept up with it here and there, and then there were some people that after All In sort of started paying a bit more attention to the brand and what we were doing, and then people sort of after the Crockett Cup with Marty, you know, so it's like there's these different stages where people kind of jumped on, and then obviously then when Power launched, it kind of exploded our audience again, and then built like, so we kind of we've always just sort of we've had like a core group, you know, and then we would add a little bit to it, then we'd have a big sort of influx, then, you know, some of those would fall off and we'd be left with a slightly bigger core audience, and so on and so on. And I just, you know, I found, like I said, I found myself in a lot of interviews sort of recalling the circumstances and stuff. And then I thought, you know, it is quite an interesting couple of years, you know, because I think a big part of it, a lot of people didn't see, was the sort of was the real sort of dirty work that me and David Lagana did at the very, very beginning. Like once we had the match, the show, that god awful CZW show where I won the title from Tim, it was like I came back to England, I went to Ireland, you know, and then you know, around the States, and, you know, defended the title a lot.
Of course, like everywhere.
And took every booking, you know, good, bad, like just because we just agreed that at that point, the best thing to do was just to keep sort of feeding that idea of like, the title was defended again. It was defended in this place, in this place, in this country, in this city, in this place. And, you know, some of the stuff we sort of dealt with in the early days, you know, and just how we were sort of bootstrapping it. I mean, it was literally just me, Dave, a camera, and the belt, you know, kind of going around trying to sort of make this, you know, something. And then Dave would go and work his magic with it. And some of the time he was editing that stuff like while we were on the road, so he could put it out, you know, but it looks so slick and so well produced that people were kind of like, this is cool, this is different.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just like, I just think it'd be interesting. And just some of the interactions we had, you know, some of the people that at the beginning were kind of like, some of the stuff people said to us, you know, versus then what they said like a year later, you know, or what they said publicly, like, oh yeah, no, it's so great what they've been doing, you know, whereas like a year before they've been like, oh, what the fuck is this? It's stupid, you know. So like, just and I think for a lot of people, there's always been this sort of weird mystery of like, what happened with me when I finished up with TNA, and like why I didn't go to WWE, and, you know, what was I doing in that sort of time in between. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to cover it all in detail, and just because I think it all sets up, I think one of the main things I'm trying to get across with it is that this business is so based on circumstance, and there are a lot of very, very talented people out there who never reach the sort of level that they deserve to reach, simply because of like one person, you know, or because of certain timing or certain circumstances, or like, you know, the sort of, you know, over-engineered sort of corporate agendas and all sorts of different stuff where, you know, and ultimately it's kind of like, you know, it's more of a tale, like making your story, you know, rather than trying to sort of fit into someone else's story.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and how in many ways it's kind of like, it's almost a greater fool story. I don't know if you're familiar with the greater fool concept, but it's like, it takes, you know, the greater fool is always, there's always one, you know, it's basically someone who does the thing that seems like this, not the wisest thing in the world to, you know, in terms of sort of individual success maybe, or prestige, but ends up being very important to the, you know, to the long-term effect, you know, to everybody else.
So like the ecosystem of it. Yeah. Like I get that. That's cool, man.
You know, like it, you know, there's only, put it this way, you can, there are, you know, I just got done watching the ESPN series on the Bulls, the Last Dance. It's phenomenal. I'd recommend anyone to check it out. And, you know, watching that, what you get to learn about Michael Jordan is that, like, he just decided that, like, he was going to be the best guy. He was going to work harder. He was going to be better, and he was going to force his will onto everyone around him and drag everyone up with him.
Right.
But he didn't walk into a great team.
Yeah.
You know, he obviously had phenomenal talent. Obviously, it's a very different situation to the wrestling business, but there are some things that I took from that, you know, because, like, I remind people sometimes that, like, when Hulk Hogan went to work for Vince McMahon Sr., he wasn't sitting there going, oh, I finally get to work for the WWF, you know, like, it wasn't considered like this be-all, end-all kind of thing. Like, hey, let me go see if I can make this, you know, maybe this is the place for me, you know, after he had, and then he goes to the AWA, and basically the entire Hulk Hogan character was created there. Yeah. You know, then he comes back and then Vince Jr. is the one who then sort of, you know, and it's just timing, you know, but I always remind people, like, the WWF that existed post Hogan did not exist to Hulk Hogan when he was in the business. So he wasn't sitting there going like, oh, if I could just get to WWF, you know, like, that's my be all end all. That's my ultimate goal, is just to go to WWF. No, his goal was just to be a big time pro wrestler and draw money. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and for whatever people want to say about, like, Cody or the Bucks or whoever else, it's like they decided to, they could have very easily gone, okay, yeah, we'll sign with WWE, you know, and we'll go join the machine, and, you know, we'll get our money and the thing rolls on. But, you know, they've for like I said, for better or for worse, they've created something else. Yes. You know, and things always, you know, and that's what we wanted to do, is just to create, you know, a new world for fans. You know. Yeah. We're not trying to take anybody down. We're not trying to throw shade at anybody. Yeah. We're not trying to say like when we talk about how, like, none of our shit's scripted, we're not throwing shade at WWE because all their shit's scripted. Yeah. Like, everyone knows their shit's scripted. Yeah. We're just saying, like, if you don't like that, maybe try us. You know, it's the same way that if you don't like chick flicks, you know, watch an action film. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and for me, it's like, I concluded a few years ago now, I sort of came to realize that I was more interested in becoming the person that I envisioned myself to be, rather than becoming a WWE guy just for the sake of being a WWE guy. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that actually, I was actually going to leave this one to the end, but I wanted to ask you about your definition of success, because we get a lot of young people who want to be, you know, musicians or wrestlers or whatever, and they might look at Nick, they might look at you and be like, oh, Nick has done, you know, Nick's been to TNA, he's now in NWA world champion, I'm never going to get there. And they judge their worth on, you know, WWE level of success, I'm never going to get there, or NWA level of success. And I wanted to know what your definition of success, what does it mean to you? Because I've talked to a lot of young people about that, and it can really fuck with their mental health. It can really mess with them. So what do you define as success? What does that mean to you? I've always believed that progress is really what people mean when they mean success. Mm-hmm. Because somebody who has aspirations like I do outside of wrestling, who has aspirations to build a business, you know, and to be an entrepreneur, you know, if you gave, like, the people who are most likely to achieve it, I think, if you sat them down and gave them the option and said, okay, tomorrow, you know, you can click your fingers and tomorrow everything you've set your goals to achieve can be yours. You know, you can wake up tomorrow and you have a giant business, a giant empire, and you have the money, you know, you have the respect, you have the prestige. You know, the people who I truly believe this, the people who are most likely to achieve that would probably not want it, because it's actually the progress which is the enjoyable part. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't have this sort of, I've always tried to think of sort of who I want to be rather than what. Nice. You know, and because the worst thing you can do is to become crystallized in your, you know, ideals, because I can assure you that some of the things that I really wanted to do 10 years ago are not the same things that I want to do now. 10 years ago, I gave no thought to my financial stability. You know, I gave no thought to my sort of investment portfolio, right? Or you know, okay, like how am I going to set myself up so that, you know, I can do life on my own terms, and I don't have to be a slave to, you know, to somebody else money wise, right? And that comes in a series of things, from investing, from infinite banking, from, you know, passive income ideas, you know, just a lot of different things, which takes time to build, you know, depending on how much money you make, but it can be done. Yeah. But like, sometimes I think back and I think, God damn, I wish I'd been thinking that way when I was with TNA, because I was making better money, especially towards the end. Yeah. You know, like I could have set myself, you know, but again, that wasn't my values at that point. Yeah. You know, all I cared about, you know, in TNA was just like going out, you know, meeting girls, you know, whatever, like hanging out with my friends, and my spot on the show. You know, what a creative have for me? Like, well, you know, what am I doing on the show? You know, like, like, you know, what, like, am I on the show at all? You know, and it's like, you know, the perspective was off, but I was a kid. I was in my 20s, you know. So for me, I think success is about making progress toward, you know, a final vision that you have for who you want to be.
Yeah, I like that. Absolutely. It's a good message, just because, like I say, we get a lot of people that, you know, they want success now, and they look at you and they go, yeah, right, okay, how do I get that now? But people find it difficult to understand that you've got to go through years. You know, you started this when you were 18, and that actually moves on to my next question, talking about how you've developed. You know, how have you developed since you were 18 when you started your career to right now? You know, you've been through TNA, and I read somewhere in an interview where you said, you know, you'd kind of been Magnus for so long that when Nick Aldis came out, you had to figure out what Nick Aldis was about again. And I wanted to ask you, like, how have you developed personally as you've been part of your career, as you've been developing?
Yeah, I think that for me, like I said, I had a situation where I came in, you know, it was like 22 or 21 when I signed, 22 when I started on TV, and even coming off of Gladiators, which I had done before TNA, it was like, you're Oblivion, you know, you're some other character. Like, this is your character now. And to be fair to Sky and to Gladiators, sorry, I'm trying to turn here so that this light isn't just like completely like haloing me out. I'm gonna sit over here. Cool. It was like they allowed me to sort of make it my own. You know, I mean, no one really told me what to do with the Oblivion character at Sky, and I mean, I smashed it. I mean, I wasn't even supposed to be on that show. I was supposed to be a stand-in alternate, and then I just like forced them to change their mind because I could talk, and like you know, but wrestling has evolved or devolved, depending on how you want to look at it, to where wrestlers don't make their own decisions anymore. Yeah, like wrestlers, for the most, you know, half of a sort of aspect of being a pro wrestler for a televised wrestling company now is being an actor. Yes, which we're not trained to do. You know, and I get that that's not. It's not always the wrong thing. You know, it's like it's not always there is no perfect system. You know, I think that's the most frustrating thing about it, is that everyone seems to be trying to sort of devise this perfect formula for how to achieve success in an art, you know, in a completely subjective art. And so I personally was never going to resonate with an audience doing something that was someone else, you know, that someone else had written, being someone else.
Yeah.
You know, and so Brutus Magnus, you know, this, like, who they clearly they had never actually seen what I did on Gladiators, because had they seen it, they would have realized that the main reason I succeeded on that show was by being the exact opposite of like a typical stoic, like, gladiator type.
Yeah.
Because that's what all the other guys are doing. And I looked at that and went, everyone else is doing that, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to be Ric Flair up in here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Right. And like, because everyone else was trying to be like, you know, or like, you know, well, first of all, everyone wanted to be a babyface on that show. Like, I'll never forget when the producers came in and sat everyone down and they said, okay, guys, we know that this is something that, you know, you're not going to want to hear, but somebody has to be a bad guy on this show. Right. And it was like they were saying that, like, somebody has to have HIV. Like, I mean, the guys were looking around like, I don't want, and I was like, yeah, I'll be the bad guy. Like, I thought they were, with the way they teed it up, I thought everyone would be like, me, like, I want to do it, you know, and nobody wanted to do it. They all went, oh no. And I just went like, yeah, like 100%. And they were just like, really? And I went, yeah. And I looked at everyone. I never forget this. One of the guys on the show called Sam, he was Atlas on the show. When the guys, he looked at me and he goes, Nick, are you sure you want to do this? And I just went, ask me again when the show starts. I said, trust me. I said, next season, there'll be a whole lot of people want to be the bad guy. And sure enough, you know, come the next season, suddenly everyone's kind of, oh, I'm going to do this, that. And it was like too late. Like,
yeah, you'd already hit that. You'd already got there. Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I was 21 then. It was just completely going off instinct, but with enough education from the wrestling business to understand the basic skills needed, you know. But then my first 2 or 3 years in TNA, I was not allowed, I wasn't allowed to make a decision on anything. You know, it was like,
that must have been really frustrating.
How's it, you know, what to wear, what to say, you know, what to, like, how to friggin' walk. Like, and even when they put me with Doug in a tag team, it gave me a bit of freedom to sort of, to find myself a little bit in the ring. But it was still just like, well, Doug calls the match, you do whatever. And it was like, if even the agents, you know, like Al Snow and D'Lo and stuff, like, if I had a good idea for a spot or for something, or finish or something in a match, I would say it to Doug, and I would have Doug go tell it to him, because I said, if I go tell them, they're just gonna say no. If I go suggest it, they're just gonna go, no. You know, I'll come up with something better. You know what I mean? Just because they were just convinced that they had to know better than me. You know, right. And it's like, I don't give a shit whose idea something is.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to, like, me and Lagana were having this discussion when we were talking about this new Carneyland show, which is like, we're just trying something different, because who wants to watch wrestling in an empty building? You know, it's just, I don't get, it's just painful to watch, you know? And we just said, there's no democracy here in terms of, like, what makes it on the show. It's just if it's good or not. Like, we're not going to put every single person's idea on the show just because it's their idea. But at the same time, we're also not going to, you know, just turn down. If someone comes up with 8 good ideas and they're all really good, we'll put all 8 of them on. Yeah. You know, there isn't this thing of like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to look bad, you know. And in wrestling, there's such an obsession with who gets the credit for everything, which never used to exist. And honestly, I think that more than anything has what's led to this sort of completely different type of discourse that exists now with the industry and the fans, is that there's this overwhelming need to know whose idea everything was, you know, and who came up with it and like why, and, you know, who wrote it or who booked it or who did, you know, and it's just like, didn't you like it better when you didn't know? You know, like, you know, I like Vince Russo. I still keep in touch with Vince, like, and I enjoy talking to him. He's an entertaining guy, and I get on very well with him. You know, I don't have to necessarily agree with everything he says and does, but I don't agree with everything anyone says or does. I don't agree with everything my wife says. You know what I mean? It's like I look back at some of my own shit and don't agree with what I said. Yeah, you know, but like Vince he's been, you know. He's sort of been a victim of that culture, but he also helped create that culture, because when all that stuff was happening, it was it was red hot. Yeah. And Vince was responsible for a good portion of that, but nobody at the time knew about it. They didn't sit there and know that there was this guy, Vince Russo, you know, who was writing this stuff. They just were just like, wow, this is nuts, you know, like, because once you associate what you're watching with a personality that you now have to decide whether you like or dislike or agree or disagree with, it's completely taken away the objectivity of your mind. Now you're looking at it subjectively, right? Like, because I see it all the time now. It's like anytime there's any sort of angle that's like remotely, what should we call it? Sort of outrageous, or, you know, some, you know, or kind of, it's like immediately it's like, oh, this has got Russo written all over it. You know, this is a Russo. And honestly, he should take pride in that, you know, in the sense that he was the one who ushered a lot of that stuff in. But it's like, what I don't understand is like, how does he get this sort of negative connotation, but like Paul Heyman with ECW, you know, is lauded as this genius. And I like Paul. Yeah. I mean, and Paul's, you know, obviously Paul's still in a position of, you know, very, very prominent position to this day. But it's just interesting to me how, like, and I don't think that comes down to anything more than personalities, you know, because people are judging the work based on the personality of the person who wrote it and was responsible for it, right? Everything in the post-reality show era is a fucking popularity contest, you know, because it's like now everyone has to decide whether they like or don't like someone. Yeah. And subsequently, whether they like or don't like any of their work. And I just don't operate like that. And by the way, no one successful should think like that, you know, because if you're going to dismiss stuff or, you know, not get on board with stuff because you don't like where it came from, then, I mean, it's, you know, if it's an ethical thing, then fine. But like, if it's just because, you know, someone just rubs you the wrong way, and it's like, a good idea is a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's interesting, just to pick up on something you said earlier, not necessarily picking on D'Lo and Al for their treatment, but do you think that's what happened there? There was just a perception of you that they created in their head, because you obviously had great ideas, and this is what is really interesting, you know, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but was it that perception of you that kind of, right, okay. Okay. It was. And so look, when I came into TNA, a lot of the people there didn't even know that I was a wrestler. They thought I was a guy from a TV show that Dixie had fallen in love with and wanted to put on TV. So now, of course, they're all like, oh, fuck this guy. And, you know, Doug helped change a lot of that, because Doug had been one of the first guys in Britain to really speak up for me when nobody had heard of me. So in a weird sort of full circle moment, he was able to get a job with TNA to be my tag team partner because they wanted something from me, you know? So it's like, and he had no ego about that. There was no part of him that came in and was just like, I can't believe, like, he never, you know, he never held that over, you know, and like a lot of guys' egos would have really found that difficult to swallow, that like this kid who doesn't know his arsehole from his elbow, you know, has a contract, and that's how I get a job to be his tag, you know what I mean? But it was like, he just immediately said, hey, because again, by that point in his life, he's in his 30s. He's got a better perspective on things. And he goes, hey, shit happens in this business. And it's like, there's circumstances are just the way they are. That's all you can do is make the best of the circumstances. You know, you play the hand you got dealt. And he helped change a lot of that perception, because he then would make an effort to really visibly consult with me on stuff, so that everyone could see that, like, you know, we were, you know, he didn't go like, all right, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. You know, but a lot of the people we worked with would be just talk to Doug. You know what I mean? They would just be like, Doug, what should we do? You know, I think we should do this and do that, you know? So, you know, and it just, you know, the egos in wrestling are obviously, you know, peanut butter and jelly, you know, but it's like it's the guys who are able to put it to the side and not work with an agenda. But, you know, I don't like, I like D'Lo and Al. I don't want people to think I dislike them. I just, you know, I would tear my hair out back then, because, you know, it was, and look, they're just trying to survive. Yeah. Everything comes down to guys trying to survive, because in their mind, you know, everything comes with an agenda. Like, I never forget, I had the world title in TNA. I worked through all that, you know, worked all the way through, worked every spot on the card, worked my way up to the top of the card, became the top guy, became the world champion. And within 4 weeks, it was like, because I didn't, you know, toe the line for John Gaburik the way that he thought that I should, and because I got a concussion, a really severe concussion in the match where I won the title, it was like he completely changed his perception, you know, he completely changed his tune on me, right? And just did a 180 on me, and you could just tell that he was just like, oh, you know, and he was going to do everything he could to basically devalue me, so that then he could justify taking the title off me and just fucking me off, and I would never be in that top spot again. And like, yeah, you could feel everyone in the company knew this. So it was like, for that last year, even though I made more money in that last year than ever, you know, I was the only guy who lost the world title, basically got demoted to like back to the middle of the card and got a raise. Yeah. You know, but it was like, even Lagana, you know, I've talked to him about it. I mean, all the people in the company, usually like they don't have as much time for you as they did before, you know, because it's like, because everyone has to live in that autonomy of whoever's calling the shots. So then they have to kind of go, oh yeah, like, and so they all have to sort of work toward an agenda, you know, based on whoever's hot at the moment, you know. I mean, I remember different guys, you know, they would get a hard on for whoever, Jesse Sorensen, you know, the kid with the football or whatever. And it was like, you know, as you see all the agents all flocking around, hey, Jesse, you know, what you should do is, hey, good job out there, kid. You know, I'd be sitting there going like, that wasn't a good job. It sucked, you know, like, but again, it's just the politics of the business. It's just because they all want it. They're all hoping that, you know, whoever it is that loves him sees them, you know, mentoring. So then they go, oh, he's a great guy. You know, he's a team player. You know, so, you know, and look, again, like I said before, you know, I've had people who I know for a fact have talked utter shit about me, you know, have come up to me during this run and been like, hey, listen, I just want to tell you, you know, what you're doing with the NWA title, and, you know, what you guys have done is unbelievable, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. They just want a job. Yeah. They just want a job. Like,
it's a shame.
Me and Lagana always joke, we know who's looking for a job versus who's like genuine, you know, being genuine about what they're saying, because the ones who are looking for a job always just go, oh yeah, no, I love what you guys are doing, like old school wrestling. It's like, you have not watched the show at all. You have no clue what you're looking at. But there is nothing old school about what we do other than the set, which is which is a retro, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's nostalgic.
Other than the fact that we have old school principles in the sense that we let guys who can talk go out and talk. Yeah. You know, and we have matches with psychology, and we have, like, you know, we tried to make wrestling believable. Yeah. Like, there's nothing old school about what we do. We don't work a headlock for 5 minutes. Yeah. You know, we don't cut those old school kind of promos where we're sort of, hey, listen here, brother. You know, we don't. There's, you know, other than the aesthetic and the graphic, there's nothing old school. So, but the people who have watched it, you can tell, because they go, man, Tim Storm, you know, oh my God, I've never heard of him, and now I love the guy, you know, or like, you know, I mean, we've had serious players in the business, like Edge texts me, you know, has texted me a lot about like what I've been doing, and like Tim, and you know, he loves it, you know, and he's
amazing.
Like, right, think for me, like, you know, I was like a teenager when Edge was, you know, was really becoming like a top guy, and now he's like exchanging, you know, we're having like these text conversations about like our creative, you know, ideas, and sort of, you know, he's like telling me about like how he formed his newest version of his character and stuff, because he respects what I've been able to do, and like that's
awesome.
I mean, a massive thing, you know, to think that, you know, to have the respect of somebody like that, because again, he has no agenda. Obviously, he don't want a job, you know, he don't need one, but he's like, he goes out of his way to, you know, to text me, man, you know, great shit. Like, I've just been watching your stuff. I love it. It's so great. Like, oh my God, this, you know, the thing with you and Marty, or the thing with you and Tim, like, it just, you know, goosebumps, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me going.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, I've got a couple more questions for you, but I wanted to ask, because it just sounds like you're really happy now. So pretty straightforward. Are you happy right now in this position you're in?
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said that, you know, I wasn't feeling like a little bit insecure about the, you know, about the situation.
Of course.
You know, with because, you know, we exist on the whim of Billy Corgan, you know, and Billy understood that this investment was going to be, you know, quite a long one. And it wasn't likely to show a return on investment for quite some time. But he also, you know, he also can't just piss his money away. So, you know, the real struggle is building and cultivating an audience, and being able to keep up with the expectation that then gets put on it. Because once you have a bit of success, the expectation just rises so quickly. You know, it's like, when are you guys going to have TV? When are you guys going to do pay-per-views? When are you guys going to do arenas? You know, when it's like, whoa, you know, like, it you know, we've existed for like less than 3 years, you know. Absolutely. And like we really pretty much started from nothing. I mean, other than the belt, which still had some credibility, you know, we from as a visual representation of the past, still had some credibility. The name and the logo, which again, to a very small, you know, had something, and Tim Storm, which we lucked out with, you know, which we just happened to get lucky because he just fit the style of presentation we were going for so well. The rest of it was what, you know. So we had to come up with everything from scratch. And, you know, our process was like, I didn't take a paycheck from Billy for 6 months.
Man.
Like, yeah. And at one point I remember he reached out to me and said, hey, like, do you want to start getting paid? You know, like let me know when you want to start getting paid. And I was like, let me do the work and get this thing viable, you know, try to get this thing viable first. Because what I mean by that is because I was obviously making money from my independent bookings.
Of course.
So all those bookings where I was defending the title, they, you know, they were just, that was my money. You know what I mean? That was like whatever I got paid to do those shows is what I got paid. It wasn't, you know, I never got paid to do 10 pounds of gold or any of that stuff, or, you know, any of the media and everything. We were all in this together. That was kind of my investment in the company.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was only after we had got to All In, and, you know, obviously we're sort of suddenly then we're kind of really, you know, had a sort of upward trajectory. You know, Billy basically said, I want to put you on a salary, you know, and I said, okay, you know, if you're comfortable with it, because the last thing I wanted was for him to be resentful and to think, oh God, I got to pay this, you know, because look, he's earned every penny he's ever made, you know, and he's earned it in the music business, which, as you know, is just is equally as unpredictable and unkind as the wrestling business, you know? And so like, I appreciate the value of $1, So I'm not going to just sit here and be like, oh yeah, brother, you know, like, please, yeah, start paying me, you know, like give it to me. Like I voluntarily took a pay cut during the virus because I said, what good is it for me to make the same money I was making before if the company doesn't exist 6 months from now?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like I help do my part to help stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
You know, like the reality is, everywhere else I've ever been in wrestling, I was always looking to be like, I treated it like I was this prospect and I really wanted people to sort of recognize me, you know, and like, you know, and lived in this sort of fantasy world that like somewhere out of the blue, like Vince McMahon or, you know, somebody would just pluck me out of the thing and be like, I'm anointing you, you're going to be a star. And like, hey, that happens for some people. It didn't happen for me though. But like,
hey, you've done all right, man. Like,
sure. No, yeah, no, but yeah. I think, but the interesting thing is that when that was my mentality, I wasn't that guy. But with the NWA, my mentality has always been to be like the team captain.
Yes.
You know, if Billy's the owner, if Billy's the general, you know, like say, like Billy's the coach and Dave's the general manager, or the other way around, whichever you want to call it. Like, I'm the captain, you know, like I want to be the best player on the team, but I also want to lead everybody else, you know,
Absolutely.
because it's like, I don't just want me to succeed. I want this to succeed.
Absolutely. Like a whole machine. You want everybody to succeed. Like I pick up on something you said earlier. You want to bring everybody up with you, which I like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a nice way. It's a nice way of looking at it. You want to bring everybody up.
And that's why I also, you know, where I said, well, if everyone else has to take a pay cut, I have to take a pay cut too. And if I want to be in the top spot, you know, I have to work the hardest, you know, and sacrifice the most. And that's, you know, you know, everybody on our roster has, you know, just, I mean, completely crushed it to the, you know, for the most part. I mean, and there's a lot of seasoned pros there who have been at this a long time.
Yeah.
And some of them have, you know, flirted with stardom and, you know, had dips in and out like a lot of people do. And they all sort of understand and appreciate what we're trying to achieve here, which is something pretty ambitious.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
It's like that sort of core focus and that team sort of mentality is what will keep us going and get us over the finish line, I think.
Absolutely, man. 2 or 3 more questions now. Just because talking about that next level, you know, I read a quote from you the other day, necessity breeds innovation. And I wanted to know how, you know, obviously NWA, you've got some stuff going on now, which is obviously like looking back at some of the stuff that's happened, but what kind of things are you sort of a part of at the minute, sort of looking at the future with NWA in this kind of pandemic time? Well, because we don't know when the end is. You know, and I know you're involved heavily with the inner workings of NWA, and everyone's working together to sort of bring that, you know, bring the ship up, so to speak. So talk to me about kind of the innovation and some of the things that you can tell me anyway, that's going forward for NWA.
Well, you know, so obviously Carneyland debuts today. You know, awesome. I don't know when this interview is going to go out, but it's today. And look, I don't know what kind of reaction it's going to get. I dare say it's probably going to get a mixed reaction. Would be my guess based on my instinct of knowing our audience. Is that, again, because we've set this expectation now. You know, it's going to be, to an open-minded viewer, they're going to enjoy it, hopefully. You know, but to someone who's created this sort of completely unattainable image in the head of what they think it's going to be, they might be disappointed. But it's trying to be entertaining rather than just trying to give we'd rather try something new than to do a lesser version of what we do well.
Yeah.
Because to us, that's an asset, and we don't want to diminish the value of that asset by just kind of trying to do like a pound stretcher version of it, you know, because we can't have any fans in the building and stuff.
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot more deep dive stuff just on the inner workings of the company. And I think that's something that I think that's probably going to be the main thing that keeps us going, honestly, is doing what we've done best with the 10 Pounds of Gold series, which is make those HBO, ESPN 30 for 30 type, shows that really pull people in and give them an honest and earnest kind of look at how we do all this, and it really sort of lets the audience in a way that they're not usually let in. Although WWE does some incredible work in that area too, and you've got to give them credit for that. But I think that we do it in real time. I think that's the main difference, is that a lot of the time what we're doing is what's happening right now. It's not it's not kind of covering what happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But again, if you look at WWE with like the Edge thing they just put out and the Undertaker thing, it's like now they're kind of stepping up and they're starting to do more stuff that's much more current. But Dave is brilliant at that. And so I that's going to be where I want to focus most of our attention. We also pitched a different project, which Billy is greenlit and said, okay, go for it. Let's try to make it happen, which is very ambitious. And is going to, it's kind of like, once I pitched it, it was kind of like, then when he said, yeah, okay, let's do it, I suddenly went, shit, I've never really written anything in my life. I've been involved in the process, and have been involved with the booking process, but not writing something, all out, which is what I'm going to be in the position to doing now.
Oh, that's amazing, man! Congratulations.
So, yeah, well, look, it's very much in the embryonic stage, but it's like, it was just something that we talked about as like we can't have fans, it's still kind of irresponsible to fly get everybody in from all over the country to be somewhere to do something. But what can we do that's, and Carneyland was one of the things, some other sort of ancillary content, but then there was this other thing, and it was like, well, none of us know how to do it, but we'll find people who can help us, and, and we're going to go for it. So it's exciting. And in the meantime, we just basically have to if we can keep our YouTube viewers numbers up, and we can keep, a decent amount of interest, and we can continue to sort of keep putting out good merchandising that people are interested in, but because merchandise really helps keep us going, because we've got to a point where we're turning over, quite a substantial amount of merch, and that kind of helps keep everything moving. So it's like, but we don't want to just hawk whatever, it's, so if that sort of systemic kind of innovation of merchandise off the back of some of this content and stuff can help, keep sort of feeding the beast, then I think we'll be okay.
Nice, man. So I'm not going to push you too hard. So what I'm getting is you're going to be writing some stuff. You're going to be writing some stuff for the company. Okay, cool. All right, that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah, new original content.
All right, I'm excited to see it, man, for sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about before the end of the chat is I like the fact that Nick Aldis, now you as a character and as a person, seem to have a really good brand. You've got your own like custom suits and stuff, which I've seen, and you've talked in interviews about not necessarily criticizing people that don't have an athletic build, but you want to see people with that kind of that athletic build in NWA, and in people that have that appearance and that value in their appearance. As an extension of that, what value do you place in your brand and your appearance, and always looking? I mean, you look like a champion. You know what I mean? You're always wearing the suits and stuff. So, do you think that's lost in modern day wrestling? Do you think that the sort of value of appearance isn't taken as seriously?
I don't know if it's lost. I think that wrestling has a tendency to swing very hard in terms of fads and fashion and stuff. So then, once and again, WWE, are responsible for a lot of this too, because it's like, as soon as sort of, and again, this is not, I don't mean this in a disparaging way,
No,
but as soon as a fat guy gets over, suddenly they go and hire 20 fat guys, or as soon as a little guy, gets over, they go and hire 20 little guys, or like, and so on and so on. And it's so, and you kind of like, I remember for the longest time, people say, oh, WWE don't hire anyone under 6 foot, like that was what we all got told that for years, so they'd be like, oh, you'll be all right, you're 6'4", and I got told all the time, you're like the perfect, you're like the exactly what WWE wanted, like 6'4", 250, blah blah blah, and I'd be like, and for the longest time, that worked against me, because not only did WWE already have a lot of guys like that, but they also, but then it's also like the rest of the industry is trying to sort of rebel against that. So then I got, through no fault of my own, got like all this kind of residual heat of like being like, oh, that was a typical, it was a typical body looking guy. And I was like, it used to drive me crazy, because you used to get a lot of guys would do this. They would cut all these promos, oh, I'm not 6'4", I'm not 240, and blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, well, that's like me going out there and saying like, I can't do a 630. You know what I mean? Like, that's the gift that you were given. Okay, use it. Like, this is what I was given. I'm using it, right? Like, it's just this kind of this culture that kind of existed of like, really just malcontent. It's this sort of malcontent culture that kind of has permeated through wrestlers and wrestling fans, where like it sort of have to be recreationally disapproving and unhappy with whatever is the current fare. We have to constantly be rebelling against whatever WWE is doing, and I just think it's stupid. And like, but to answer your question, yeah, I never deviated from it, because I knew that wrestling, certainly the way I wanted to succeed, was about capturing people's attention and emotion on a sort of on a very primal level. Yeah. And having that self-awareness to know, okay, like it's another thing. I see it told all the time, but like all the time, oh, you'll be a big baby face, like Brian Dixon, they say you'll be a big baby face, like you're tall and good looking and chicks like you and stuff. I said, yeah, that's exactly why I'll be a massive heel. Yeah. Yeah. Like, because I understood my generation. I understood the cynicism of this social media generation, and and especially British, when I'm talking about the British people don't like that. Yeah. Like, they're, oh, he thinks he's a bit special, doesn't he? Like it's I said, I used to plead with Dixon, like, let me be a villain, let me be a heel, and he'd be like, no, you're tall and good looking and blah blah blah. Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone hates me, like nobody like, and so, and it's like, I just I don't really think that your appearance like defines you, but I think that you have to own your appearance, and then it defines you, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, nobody knew they wanted Mick Foley, until Mick Foley showed up, and everyone went, oh, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change anything about that. It all just works. Nobody said, what would be great would be like this 6'4" guy, but he's kind of pear-shaped, but God, he's a great athlete, and God, he can move, but he's got like long hair. No one was describing Mick Foley when they were talking about that. That would be a great thing. The same way with Steve Austin. It's like Steve Austin, the bald head, goatee, black trunks, black boots, and he had a good physique, but he wasn't Mr. Olympia. He was like, he looked like a guy who lifted weights and drank beer, because he was. Yeah. But so your look has to reflect who you're trying to portray is what I'm sort of driving at, like, if you're, whatever your character is, you should be, your body and your appearance should reflect, the energy you're trying to put out from your character.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think it's just some good advice for people, trying to get into the business, just because, some people talk about you know, appearance being quite valuable, and some people say it's not a thing, but I think going from your experiences,
of course it is.
Yeah,
it's human nature, you know.
Yeah.
You know, the dumbest phrase ever sort of popularized in the modern history is "Don't judge a book by its cover." Utter nonsense.
Yeah.
Like,
it's human nature.
Even if it's not a fancy cover, you still read it. You still see because it's telling you what's inside.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense. You know, like, judge every book by its cover. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you have to sit there and read a book to find out whether you like it or not. You know, like. Yeah,
it's a natural thing for sure. Just before we finish off, man, because we do a lot of work with young people and mental health and stuff who go through dark periods, I wanted to pick up on sort of the time between the call from, and I know you're going to put this in your book, but this is a bit slightly deeper, I suppose. That time period before NWA and between, you know, TNA, where you were doing bookings, but you were wondering whether to quit wrestling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about your motivations outside of wrestling, things that got you through that. It might have been your family, could have been music. Obviously, we talk a lot about music on our platform. The things that motivate you outside of wrestling, that got you out of bed in the morning when you were feeling a bit down, when you were having a dark day, or you were struggling and you were feeling demotivated. What kind of things outside of wrestling, music, family, whatever, people, places, got you out of bed and got you motivated?
Sure. Well, I mean, anyone who knows me will tell you that my personality changed quite drastically after becoming a father. You know, I just didn't have time to get wound up by the things I got wound up by before. And in many ways, I almost wish that he had come along a couple of years earlier, because I probably wouldn't have blown up my relationship with John Gaburik and TNA and stuff when I was reaching the pinnacle of my career there, you know, as the world champion, because I probably would have been less reactive and just been kind of like had a healthier perspective on things. Because I just, you know, I remember, you know, a couple of months after I had dropped the title and was kind of like obviously just being kind of floated around, and, you know, they obviously just kind of, I had a no cut contract, right? So they couldn't fire me. So they were just going to keep me around. Like, and I was doing some stuff, and, you know, and I remember people would constantly be like, "Oh man, what are they doing? I couldn't believe they did it." And I got to a point where I just went, I get paid the same either way. I got a raise, like, who cares? You know, and, you know, wrestling will have you believe that you have to be like, "Oh, I have so much passion for this business. I love it so much. I would do it for free." No, you shouldn't do it for free. Yeah. You should. The reality, like most things in our incredibly polarized kind of current level of discourse, the truth is somewhere in the middle. The facts are usually somewhere in the center, and it's ideal, you know, is to have somewhere. Yes, you want to have very high opinion of yourself. You want to have aspirations to reach to reach your full potential, to reach the pinnacle of whatever you're doing. But at the same time, it's always important to maintain a healthy perspective on why you're doing it, which is to make a living.
Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, as far as what helped me, bodybuilding and training, you know, working out, it's. I find that I'm my most disagreeable and antsy and unpleasant when if I haven't trained, you know, if I've had a less than optimum day of eating, you know, or whatever, just because that's something that I have sort of made part of my life. But it's, I don't get me wrong. Some days, you know, my workouts are better than others. But for me, for the most part, it's a hobby. You know, like, I enjoy doing it. It's because it's like I can set little challenges for myself. Like, I wonder if I can get my arms a little bigger. I wonder if I can get an inch off my waist. I wonder if I can put an inch on my calves. Like, it's an exercise for as far as mental health is just, I mean, I'm working with about half a dozen people right now who have purchased a 90-day plan through my website. I mean, you can go to nickaldis.com and I'll do a custom made 90-day plan. There's one guy, he emailed me he actually emailed me today to let me know that he has already dropped almost 20 pounds in 2 weeks, you know, which is a staggering amount of weight to have lost.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah.
But but we're talking about a guy over 300 pounds. So when, you know, in terms of a percentage, it's like, okay, yeah, it's great. Still great progress though. Unbelievable. But when I was talking to him at the beginning, he said, you know, I've just let things get on top of me and let things get me down. And I said, I completely understand that, because it's, you know, Les Brown is a guy that I really admire and follow. I listen to a lot of his stuff. He's a motivational speaker and author and stuff. But one of his things he says is, if you always do what's easy, then life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, then your life will become easier. And that's so true, because when things go wrong, which you're always going to, you can't change it, you can't alter that. There's a tendency for a lot of folks, and I've been there, to just sort of give up on everything. Like, oh, it's just easier just to sit around and do nothing. Is it easier to just eat this? It's easier to just order takeout. It's easier to, you know, and then, but it's not going to give you what you need, which is the sense of purpose and the sense of fulfillment. Set some goals and make some progress in them, and I promise you, your entire life will benefit just from the idea that you've said, I've made some fucking progress in something. Yeah. You know, whether it's like, okay, I'm going to, it doesn't even have to be anything major. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to, you know, it can be anything. Hey, I've always wondered how to make something, or, you know what I mean? I'm going to, the greatest thing about, we live in the greatest like time in terms of information in human history. We couldn't have it any easier as far as information. Yeah. You know, we go, hey, Google or Siri or Alexa, whatever, how do I make a shepherd's pie, you know, or whatever. And it's like, I've never been able to do that before. Now I can't, you know, whatever. Right. But it's just like being able to make progress in something that, you know, that then sort of helps define you as a person. That's going to get you over the hump, you know, quicker than anything. And for me, it was like, I had put way too much value in simply who I was as a professional wrestler. And then just, you know, and instead of going, okay, I need to dial it back a little and place a little more value in some other things and try to keep a bit more balance. I was like, oh, I'll just give up wrestling altogether, you know? Yeah. Which is nuts, because it was the only thing I dedicated my 10,000 hours to, you know? So it's like, no, that's, you know, but it's, you know, and that speaks to my mentality, sort of all or nothing type of mentality, which again, you have to have a little of that, right? You want to go for it all. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you didn't get it the first time, so now you're just going to quit. Like, no, it's, you know, is that the classic adage of, you know, Edison tried to make a light bulb, you know, 100 and something times, right? Or 1,000 times, whatever it was, you know, and he said, I didn't fail. You know, I just learned a bunch of different ways how to not do it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You fail your way to success, you know, is the.
Yes. I like that, man. I like that. That's a good thing to end on as well. Like, it's really good, because I think it gives, everybody makes mistakes. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to get across to people with, you know, struggling with mental health, is that it's okay to make an error. It's just, you've got to learn from it. You've got to grow from it. And, you know,
right. You're not losing, you're learning, you know, you're either winning or you're learning.
Yeah, totally, man. Fail your way to success. I'm going to remember that, dude. Thank you so much for your time today, man. Thank you for spending so much time with me. Nick, Aldis, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope to catch you down the road, man. You take it easy, man. Look after yourself. All right.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Take care, man.